Good morning and welcome back to Freedom Fridays. This is our fourth podcast in the Freedom Fridays series, and I've asked Lee to join me with this discussion, and we're going to have some rather interesting discussion. We're going to talk today about when is civil disobedience condoned, not by culture, not by those around us, but by the Bible. And so that's going to be a very difficult topic because we live in America. And I told you, Lee, I'm going to start with this.
Sure.
This is just the very beginning of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Now, we know that many of our founding fathers were believers in Christ.
Yep.
And so, given this, and especially that middle section of what I read, where it says that we have a right to reform the government when it's not working properly for the life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and you know these inalienable rights.
Yeah.
Then when is it okay for us to say, you know what, we're all going to storm Lansing, or we're all going to storm D.C., and we're going to have our ARs strapped on our back and we're taking over? Or maybe not quite that far, but maybe I don't wear my mask. I'm not wearing my mask here with you, which, by the way, we're not required to in this situation for two reasons. One, we've been exempted as a worship service type event. And two, we're exempted because this is not a public location. This is my office.
Right. And then I think we are about 6 feet apart. Anyway.
We are trying to social distance.
Right.
You can see we're on opposite ends of this video. And
the extent of the
we couldn't
view.
even get the camera any further away. So this is as far as we can get away.
Right.
So what do you think, Lee?
Well, it's kind of a sticky spot to be in, because on the one side we want to look at, we have our Constitution, we have our Declaration of Independence, we have all of these documents that our founding fathers, when we established as a nation, that are really good, strong documents, and they need to be upheld and withheld. As well, we haven't necessarily talked about too much in the past, but those are our founding documents and principles. So we want to honor those things. We want to hold fast to those, because if we didn't, then we become a lawless society.
Right.
At the same time, though, we have to balance this is the sticky part. We have to balance what man-made document is, and based off of, you can ask the questions of why did they write it that way?
Mm-hmm.
Is it in response to England back in that day, in that time when that was very real, and they needed to literally go to war with England to start a new country, and to make sure that we as Americans had the ability to do that when we needed to, if in fact our government were to get to that point. So that kind of takes into a little account there, and then of course we have the Bible that we have to as a begrudging, but we have to look at and say, okay, this is what man's rule is what the principles we want to hold to, but then where do we see it in the Bible, and how does this lay out?
Because it all comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yep.
I mean, we've got the Constitution as Americans. You and I are both citizens of the United States of America.
Right.
So we've got the Constitution as the law of the land. But yet, as I'm sure you've preached, and I know I've preached many times, this is our ultimate authority.
Yep. Absolutely.
Above anything else, above what I think, above what you think, above what the Constitution says, the Declaration of Independence, or whoever's else's document.
Right. Absolutely.
That's really kind of where this all boils down, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple other quotes here that I think you'll enjoy.
Sure.
This one's by Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
In his letter to J.B. Colvin, September 20th, 1780. So this is after the Declaration and all of that.
Yep.
A strict observance of the written laws is doubtless one of the high duties of a good citizen, but it is not the highest.
Okay.
The laws of necessity, of self-preservation, of saving our country when in danger are of a higher obligation. To lose our country by a scrupulous adherence to written law would be to lose the law itself, with life, liberty, property, and all those who are enjoying them with us, thus absurdly sacrificing the ends to the means.
That's really interesting. So they would have been writing there when the original document was written.
Oh, he was definitely there.
Well, I know. I mean, I know that. It's just so within what 4 or 5 years
4 years.
to go from this. We have to hold to this. To wait a minute. At the same time, we also have to understand then if we were just to hold to that, then how does that work?
Yeah, the Declaration of Independence had been done, but I don't believe the Constitution had been written.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I believe that's just after this. This is 1780. I think that was 1780 something.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting. So to throw the rules away, not necessarily, but don't adhere to the rules for the sake of being able to utilize and to continue to use the things that those very rules gave us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, biblically, we've said, the Bible is our sole authority.
Yep.
For life and practice. Biblically, we see examples in the Bible.
Yep.
Of people who have committed civil disobedience, and many of those are condoned.
And blessed.
And blessed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One that I'm seeing here is Exodus chapter 1.
Yep.
Where the civil authorities said, you must kill all the male babies.
Yep.
Of Israel's descent, of Hebrew descent.
Yep.
You got to throw them in the Nile. The crocodiles will take care of the rest of it.
Yep. Absolutely.
And the midwives instead saved the babies and then gave a line to Pharaoh saying, well, these women are too fast in giving birth, and so, we can't keep up with them.
Right.
Which wasn't necessarily accurate.
Nope.
But they were blessed for it.
Yep.
In fact, the scripture says they were so blessed for it that God gave them families of their own.
Yes.
And then we find, of course, Moses' mom going by the letter of the law that I hear, but not the spirit of the law, because the letter of the law said throw him in the Nile. It didn't say you couldn't put him in a boat.
Right, exactly.
But still not the spirit of the law. So,
right.
How do we justify that? I mean,
well, and that's an interesting thing. I mean, there's a lot of other examples too, which I'm sure we'll talk about as we go through this. But it's really it's a really interesting concept when you look at when you have the Bible as our authority. God's word is the ultimate rule on everything. So and I know that was before the Ten Commandments were given, but God doesn't change. His rules are the same from not rules, but his word is the same from before eternity past to eternity future.
And his nature doesn't change.
Right. Nothing of him changes. So it's not the fact that, okay, all of a sudden when the Ten Commandments were given, it was now no longer okay to murder. So, you look at that and then...
Sure, Cain was held accountable for murder.
Absolutely.
Well before the Ten Commandments.
Absolutely. And then you have them outwardly disobeying, and then lying, which they, got again in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not lie and things like that. So... yeah, you see them being blessed, and that's the hard thing to balance. And I don't want to give away the end of everything before we get there, which I try not to do on Sundays anyway.
Well, let's go ahead and get there. What is in your mind the de facto Bible passage for saying you should obey the government? Because we're kind of trying to play both sides here,
right? Yeah. So when I was looking through this, and I was kind of preparing for this, I've really been wrestling with this topic for, well, I think we're what, 6 weeks into the stay home order. I know, to make it a little timely thing for us.
Yeah, almost 2 months, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for that period of time, I've got some people that are, let's stay home, and other people saying no, we should be able to do this. So I've been wrestling with this concept for a long time. So this isn't a new study for me, but I'm looking through, and I don't want to say like the number one passage, but I look at Romans chapter 13,
Hmm.
and then I'll look at First Peter chapter 2.
Okay.
Those are the two passages that I go to.
Yeah, I kind of baited you by saying the passage.
Right.
Yeah, I've got both of those written down as well. Romans 13, verses 1 through 7.
Yep.
And obviously, the very beginning of this, let every person be subject to the governing authorities.
Yep.
There is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God.
Yeah.
And that's the first verse. The rest of them support that.
Absolutely.
And then we see it echoed again
Right.
in First Peter chapter 2, in verse 13. I'm a little slower getting there. You have that
I was
typed
prepared
out.
for
Yeah,
this one. Mine's just in a different version. That's okay.
Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. Recognizing governors back then were not the same as our governors today.
Right.
But his
The
point
authority
still
over.
is, right from the beginning, every human institution,
Absolutely.
every human authority.
Well, yes, and you can look at the passage in Hebrews 13 where it's talking about that's more of the church leadership side of things, as the obey the authority.
Hebrews 13 or Romans?
No, Hebrews 13:17. It says, "Obey them that have rule over you,
Okay.
and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls as they that must give an account, that they may do so with, that they may do it with joy, and not with grief, for this is unprofitable for you." And that's talking about the church leadership side of things, because
Sure.
as pastors, that's one of the things that we do watch and care over the congregation and the people that we minister to.
Sure.
I always back that up with, I'm not telling them, people that I minister to follow me and to just obey what I have to say, but that's just another human institution that God has put us in that position to be able to care for and to do that. I was
And Paul says that again,
Yep.
elsewhere. Whether you believe that Paul wrote Hebrews or not is,
right. Yeah.
topic for another day.
Yes.
But he says that elsewhere, we need to obey the authorities over us in the church, the elders and
right.
pastors and,
Yep.
and such. But at the same time, he also commends the Berean believers who kept him in check.
Right. Exactly. Well, then, with that, and that could probably be a whole nother topic for another day.
It could, I'm sure.
But that's not to say, well, I'll say my opinion, my studying through that, every person needs to be a student of the scriptures. Everybody needs to be studying to make sure. When I was, whether I was an assistant pastor or I don't want to say just a member of the congregation, but not in a ministry role, I'm always studying. I was always looking at to make sure I believe what pastor's saying. I hear what's being preached, but I want to make sure that I'm studying this out to make sure that though they've spent the time studying, that it does line up with scriptures, because, well, we're human. We can then we can fall into the temptation of, well, letting culture into the message, or personal feelings and things that aren't necessarily biblical. So we are always to be checking those things. But I encourage people, when you do that, come to me lovingly. Don't say, "Hey, you're wrong, I'm never going to listen to you again," but say, "Hey, I need to think about this."
Well, and he had some checks for that as well.
Right.
Don't entertain an accusation unless it's
Sure.
by 2 or 3 witnesses.
Right.
Against the leader.
Absolutely. But that, getting back to where we were, I mean, we have Titus chapter 3 as well. Put them in mind to be subject to the principalities and powers, to obey magistrates, to be ready to be ready to every good work. And we have a really good example, at least in my opinion, of a good example of this with David. David was anointed as the next king of Israel.
Sure.
And If you want to, from the human perspective, Saul is trying to murder him.
Yes.
If somebody's trying to kill me, what am I supposed to do? Defend myself. Naturally, as far as the human side of things, I want to defend myself. If I were to take everything aside,
But yet at the same time, he defied the government.
he did.
I mean, in one way, yeah, he didn't take revenge on his, you see him in the cave there where he cuts off a corner of
And
Saul's
feels guilty
back,
for it.
Feels guilty for
Right.
it. But
That's
then
where I was
you
going with
also
that.
see him going over to Gath and fighting with the Philistines against their other enemies. He wouldn't fight against Israel.
Right.
But, you see that,
Right.
Getting out of Dodge and deceiving Saul's cohorts
Yep.
to try and find David.
Right.
And
It's
so you see him
Yeah.
playing both sides of this.
right. And so when I was doing my notes here, I looked at, or preparing for this, I looked at verses where the Bible is very clear. We are to be obeying those that God has put in authority. And I want to start out with that point real quick before I go any further, because there'd be an argument, not a heated argument, but a discussion that I've had with some people of, God didn't put these people in authority. Why would God put an anti-Christian leader or somebody that principles are absolutely ungodly in leadership over people? Why would he do that? It doesn't fit with his, how could a loving God allow this? And I know you've talked about those things before. But then you got to go back to...
I'm going to hold you off on that one just a little bit.
Sure.
Because we're getting to the time where this is going to be a two-part thing.
Gotcha.
We're going to record it all today, but we're going to make it a two-part thing.
Gotcha.
But we're going to talk about what about when the government is clearly evil.
Gotcha.
We're going to talk about that in the next segment.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'm just going to hold you back on that part a little bit.
Sure.
But generally, should we, the Constitution is clear, the Declaration of Independence is pretty clear, and our country is founded on civil disobedience. To England, really.
Right? Oh, absolutely.
When we break it down to that.
Sure.
We see examples, like we said, Moses and the midwives there. Rahab was a good example of disobedience.
Absolutely.
I mean, she lied to the authorities in her town.
Yep.
And she was blessed for it.
Yep. Absolutely.
In 1 Samuel 14, speaking of David, just before the whole David thing, Saul had said, anybody who eats has to die before we take revenge on our enemies.
Right.
And Jonathan ate the honey.
Okay.
He dipped his stick in the honey and his eyes revived and everything. And then we find in verse 45, everybody saved him from the hand of Saul, because Saul had even said, even if it's Jonathan, he's got to die.
Right.
And they said, no, then we're not going to let you do that. And they revolted against Saul at that point.
Yes.
So there's that. There's Obadiah saving people in 1 Kings 18.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that from, I believe that was a Jezebel thing.
I believe so.
Yeah. And then 2 Kings 11, 2 Chronicles 22, we find Queen Athaliah, who, this is the one time in Scripture we find an actual revolt, a complete change of the government, as condoned.
Yep.
And her son, which was the rightful king, was kept in the temple, and then the priest brings him out since he was king. We've got Daniel.
Yep. That was the next one I was thinking of.
And Daniel did both sides as well. Because with Daniel chapter 1, he went to the authorities and said, hey, can we have vegetables and water?
Right.
And they said, okay. And he said, cool, let's do it.
Yep.
But then we find as soon as, I believe it was Darius, said, you can't pray. He signed the edict.
Right.
Where do we find Daniel next?
Praying. Openly.
In his upper room with the windows open toward Jerusalem, praying.
Absolutely. When I was thinking a little bit later, in chapter 3, where we have Nebuchadnezzar saying, or excuse me, not necessarily later, but where Nebuchadnezzar said, you're going to bow down and worship this idol.
Yeah.
And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego literally stand up against him.
Yeah.
Where everybody was supposed to bow down. And they willfully go for the punishment, and God blessed them and protected them in that fire. So we do have a lot of examples of that in the Scripture.
Next time on Freedom Fridays, we will continue this discussion on when is it okay biblically to defy the government. Have a great day.